for educational critical review and reaction is the late, great Jordan Maxwell.
Keep in mind this name, Gerald Massey, M-A-S-S-E-Y, I think it is. Gerald Massey was a very, very profoundly interesting Egyptologist. Back in the early 1900s, Gerald Massey was in New York. He was a scholar of the Egyptian world religion, and he wrote many, many volumes and volumes of books. Gerald Massey is an extraordinary Egyptologist, but he once said in one of his books, the quote was very good. He said, they, T-H-E-Y, they, whoever it is, they're going to find it very difficult. Those who have accepted the authority as truth, rather than the truth as the authority. So people have accepted authority because what do you mean authorities? Well, they're the people who write down what you are supposed to do and where you're supposed to live. They are the authors of the law. They decide what the law should be, so they write it down, and they're called scribes, and they're scribbling the scripture, they're scribbling scribes, and so they're writing down how you should think, how you should dress, how you should operate in this world, and then you follow them. Whatever they tell you to do, you follow them, and then they are the authorities. They are the ones who authored the document you call the law. Now, when I'm talking about early Christianity, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say that early Christianity has no bearing whatsoever on today's Christian religion. Christianity today looks nothing like it did 1,000 years ago. Nothing. In the motion picture world, Steven Spielberg made a movie called The Raiders of the Lost Ark. And being Jewish, he did a movie, and it was a very famous movie, extremely well done, about Indiana Jones was sent to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. Well, we talked about that before. And so where does Indiana Jones go first to find the lost Ark of the Covenant, or the lost Ark of the Hebrews? He goes to Tibet, not to the Holy Land. No, Tibet is where he goes first. And then after he goes to Tibet, he finds what he needs, the information he needs now to find the lost Ark of the Hebrews. So after Tibet, where does he then go? Well, he goes not to the Middle East, not to Israel, not to the Holy Land, but from Tibet he goes directly to find the Ark in Egypt, not the Holy Land. There's nothing holy in the Holy Land. It's all a story. And so he goes to Egypt, and be damned if he doesn't find the lost Ark in Egypt. Why? It's because Steven Spielberg is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. He knows exactly what he's doing when he puts that into a movie, that the Indiana Jones archaeologist finds the Holy Ark of the Covenant in Egypt, because it's an Egyptian symbol that has nothing to do with the ancient Hebrews, period. Because there was no such a thing as ancient Hebrews. There was no ancient Israel.
Yes, Dr. Jones, we've heard a great deal about you. Have you? Professor of archaeology, expert on the occult, and how does one say it? Obtainer of rare antiquities.
One way of saying it. Why don't you sit down? You'll be more comfortable.
Thank you. Yes, you're a man of many talents. You studied under Professor Ravenwood at the University of Chicago.
Yes, I did.
You have no idea of his present whereabouts?
Just rumors, really. Somewhere in Asia, I think. I haven't really spoken to him for 10 years. We were friends, but had a bit of a falling out, I'm afraid.
Dr. Jones, now, you must understand that this is all strictly confidential.
I understand.
Yesterday afternoon, our European sections intercepted a German communique that was sent from Cairo to Berlin. That's
You see, over the last 2 years, the Nazis have had teams of archaeologists running around the world looking for all kinds of religious artifacts. Hitler's a nut on the subject. He's crazy. He's obsessed with the occult. And right now, apparently, there's some kind of German archaeological dig going on in the desert outside of Cairo.
Now, we've got some information here, but we can't make anything out of it, and maybe you can. Tanis development proceeding. Acquire headpiece, staff of Ra, Abner Ravenwood, U.S.
Nazis have discovered Tanis.
Just what does that mean to you, Tanis?
Well, the city of Tanis is one of the possible resting places of the Lost Ark.
The Lost Ark.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, the chest the Hebrews used to carry around the Ten Commandments.
What do you mean, Commandments? You're talking about the 10 Commandments?
Yes, the actual 10 Commandments, the original stone tablets that Moses brought down out of Mount Horeb and smashed, if you believe in that sort of thing. You guys ever go to Sunday school?
Okay, we all know what's inside the Ark of the Covenant because of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? It's a glowy energy ball that gives Nazis a bad case of melty face. But it turns out that when it comes to details about the Ark, there's a source even more reliable, the Bible. First, let's go over the basics, as retold for thousands of years. The Ark of the Covenant is a holy relic from 1000 BCE, kind of like a box covered in gold, carried by the Israelites for 40 years after they were led by Moses to escape from slavery in Egypt. They wandered the desert until they found the promised land of Canaan. And along the way, got involved in all sorts of shenanigans, like being fed by God with manna from the sky, worshipping golden calves, and watching Moses go up to Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments.
The story, found in the second book of the Old Testament, Exodus, should be familiar to anyone who's gone to yeshiva or Sunday school. Later, the Ark was apparently given by King David to his son Solomon, who installed it in the temple at Jerusalem. It's been connected to the Knights Templar, and some believe it wound up in Ethiopia in the town of Aksum. But what exactly is supposed to actually be inside the Ark anyway? Part of the issue in trying to decipher the truth about the Ark of the Covenant, even the truth of its existence, is all the secrecy and protectiveness surrounding it. No one was allowed to tend to it besides the ancient Israelites' Levitical priest class, and this remains true today. At the St. Mary of Zion Church in Ethiopia, where some believe the Ark is kept, a single monk called the Guardian tends to the site, and even he is not allowed to actually see the Ark. But one thing can be agreed on. The Ark is supposed to contain the 10 Commandments, the essence of the law given to God's chosen people. You know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and so on. That is, the Ark houses the physical stone tablets onto which the commandments were scrawled, either by Moses using a chisel, or according to the classic 1956 movie 10 Commandments, burned into the stone by the finger of God. And there's more. In Hebrews 9:4, the Bible goes into some detail about the Ark's contents, which include a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. Manna was supposed to be divine food from God found on the ground that kept the Israelites alive in the desert. As read on Open Bible, it's described in a lot of different ways. In reality, as Moment Mag states, manna means wet honey in Farsi, and is likely honeydew, the digestive byproduct of insects that feed on the tamarisk tree found in the Sinai Peninsula. Such biomatter probably wouldn't have survived 3,000 years, and it's unlikely to still be in the Ark now, wherever the Ark might be. The staff, or rod of Aaron, was an artifact wielded by the brother of Moses. As Rehabilitated outlines, the Book of Numbers describes the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel writing their names on staves and putting them in a pile on the ground. The following morning, Aaron's staff had sprouted not only flowers, but entire almonds. According to 1 Kings 8:9, however, there was nothing in the Ark except, quote, the 2 tablets of stone that Moses put there. So does that mean the other parts of the Bible are wrong? Not necessarily, because Kings was written at a later date. This means someone might have taken the manna and staff out before the Ark was apparently moved to Egypt for safekeeping in 586 BCE. So unless someone else put something in it before it allegedly arrived in Ethiopia, and of course, barring miracles, it seems like the Ark might, at present, only contain stone. And maybe a face-melting lightning ball made of angel ghosts. Until someone opens the Ark, there's no way to know for sure. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about religious history are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.
Well,
Oh, look. The Hebrews took the broken pieces and put them in the ark. When they settled in Canaan, they put the ark in a place called the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, where it stayed for many years until all of a sudden, whoosh, it's gone.
Where?
Well, nobody knows where or when.
However, an Egyptian pharaoh,
Shishak.
yes, invaded the city of Jerusalem around about 980 BC, and he may have taken the ark back to the city of Tanis and hidden it in a secret chamber called the Well of Souls.
Secret chamber.
However, about a year after the pharaoh had returned to Egypt, the city of Tanis was consumed by the desert in a sandstorm which lasted a whole year, wiped clean by the wrath of God.
obviously, we've come to the right men. Now, you seem to know all about this, Tanis.
No, not really. Ravenwood is the real expert. Abner did the first serious work on Tanis, collected some of its relics. It was his obsession, really. But he never found the city.
Frankly, we're somewhat suspicious of Mr. Ravenwood, American being mentioned so prominently in a secret Nazi cable.
Oh, rubbish. Ravenwood's no Nazi.
Well, what did the Nazis want him for, then?
Well, obviously, the Nazis are looking for the headpiece to the staff of Ra, and they think Abner's got it.
What exactly is a headpiece to the staff of Ra?
Well, the staff is just a stick, I don't know, about this big. Nobody really knows for sure how high. It's capped, an elaborate headpiece in the shape of the sun, with a crystal in the center. And what you did was you take the staff to a special room in Tanis, a map room with a miniature of the city all laid out on the floor. And if you put the staff in a certain place at a certain time of day, the sun shone through here and made a beam that came down on the floor here and gave you the exact location of the Well of the Souls.
Where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, right?
Which is exactly what the Nazis are looking for.
What does this ark look like?
There's a picture of it right here. That's it.
God. Yes, that's just what the Hebrews thought.
Now, what's that supposed to be coming out of there?
Lightning. Fire. Power of God or something.
Beginning to understand Hitler's interest in this.
Oh, yes. The Bible speaks of the ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. An army which carries the ark before it is invincible.
And so the next thing, this is dealing with stories in the Bible which are not in the Bible and which are not being explained to the people. The lost ark is an Egyptian ark, not a Hebrew ark. There never was a Hebrew ark. It was just a story. But in the next movie Spielberg made was the after Raiders of the Lost Ark. The next one was the hunt for the what was it called? The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And what was the Last Crusade? Well, the Last Crusade was for the cup of Christ, for the Holy Grail, for the Holy Cup that Jesus was supposed to have drank from in the Last Supper. Well, the Last Supper is a metaphor. There was no Last Supper. It has nothing to do with people eating and drinking together in a supper. It has to do with the Jewish symbol of the Passover meal. That's a whole story we could get into if we haven't, but not now. So in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he's looking for the cup of Christ, the cup of the Grail. And so we read in the Bible, today you can read in the Bible a point where Jesus says in the New Testament, he said, upon this rock I will build my church. Now this is important because it's in the New Testament and it's supposedly Jesus saying this. And Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And so the Catholic Church, the Roman Church said, oh, upon this rock, well, a rock in the ancient Greek was Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a rock in the ancient Greek language. In the ancient world, Petra was a rock. And so the Catholic translators, they said, oh, well, it was misspelled. See, it's spelled here in the old ancient document, P-E-T-R-A, Petra. But actually, it was misspelled. It was P-E-T-E-R, Peter. And so Peter was the rock upon which Jesus is going to build his church. And so they will tell you, well, the word Peter actually, I guess, comes from Petra. And in one way or another, it comes from Petra, because Peter was like a rock. You know, he was just a big, strong guy, and he was just like a rock. And whatever he did, it was just like a big, thunderous rock. And so that's what we call Peter Petra. No, no, and no. When Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, go back and look at the word rock in the encyclopedias and dictionaries of the Bible, and you will see the word rock is a word Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a stone rock, a huge mountainous rock, and I do mean huge mountainous rock, in the country of Jordan. If it wasn't at war and so much bloodshed going on in the Middle East right now, if you had the time and the money, you could go to the country of Jordan and take a tour, and they will take you out to this enormous rock that you have to go through these canyons to get to. And when you come to it, it's a huge cathedral, a beautiful cathedral temple to an ancient gods in the country of Jordan. And that big temple out in the middle of nowhere, carved out of a huge mountain, is called Petra. Why? Because Petra is a stone. And the temple is one solid piece of stone that's chipped away and made into a beautiful temple. It's extraordinary. Well, in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, if you remember, if you saw the movie, they're looking for the lost, the cup of the Grail, and it takes them to Petra in the country of Jordan. And they go through the canyons, getting to this enormous temple that anybody can go to today if you're a tourist. And it's called Petra because it's a one big rock. Well, an important point here is that Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. And the rock is translated Petra, not Peter, P-E-T-E-R, Peter. No, Petra, P-A-T-R-A, Petra, P-E-T-R-A. And so what I'm saying is that now we see that the real story of Christianity, Jesus said, is based on Petra, that stone mountain that's carved into an incredibly beautiful temple in the country of Jordan. Jesus says in the Bible, that's the basis for my church, period. My church I am basing on Petra. So you better go back and look at the country of Jordan, and then look at Petra, the great temple that was carved out of the mountain of stone. Upon this rock I will build my church. Well, that's exactly what it is. And so when Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, they go inside the great temple of Petra, and what do they find but one of the Knights Templars? One of the Knights Templars and the Knights of St. John, and he's kneeling before an altar with all of these different candles and holy things all on the altar, and he is protecting, he's standing guard over the very foundations of Christ and the Christian religion, is in Petra, the carved temple out of a rock. And so if you really are interested in Christianity, you might want to forget all of this nonsensical stuff you've heard out of Hollywood and out of the churches, and go back and read the scripture, and it says, upon this rock I will build my church, signed Jesus. Now go back and look at Petra in the country of Jordan, and you will find that there's a whole new story based on what we today believe is called Christianity. No, Christianity is a dark and profound understanding of that great temple in the country of Jordan called Petra, and who built it, and why did they build it the way they did. And that's the foundation of real Christianity, is in Petra, in the country of Jordan. It has got nothing to do with Rome, nothing to do with Babylon or any of the rest of the ancient places in the world, but Petra.
It's absolute that they did something that we don't understand.
For years, scientists have been baffled by the mysteries hidden under the rose-red cliffs of Petra in Jordan, an ancient city sculpted from sandstone. Petra, a masterpiece of Nabatean civilization, is brimming with mysteries waiting to be unearthed. Now, scientists have discovered something astonishing in this forgotten city, challenging our understanding of past civilizations. During the equinox, they found surprising astronomical alignments on Petra's great facade and columns. Remember, Petra didn't always go by this name. Historical records, including the Bible, refer to it as Selah, revealing that it had a lengthy history before becoming known as Petra. These discoveries challenge our understanding of ancient society and expose unexpected complexities. What was the aim of these discoveries? Could they provide fresh insights into Nabatean society? Join us as we delve into how scientists discovered something strange emerging from the city of Petra in Jordan. Petra, also known as the Lost City, was built in the 4th century BCE. It came to prominence by the 1st century BCE as the capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Nestled amid the brilliant red, white, and pink cliffs and sandstone, it was the center of a thriving commerce empire. Its location on the spice trade routes connected it to far-flung locations ranging from China and India to southern Arabia, Egypt, Syria, Greece, and Rome. When you visit Egypt, you will notice the Nabatean influence everywhere. The Nabateans lived in the city in what is now southern Jordan and swiftly acquired enviable riches, attracting the interest of the neighboring Greek Empire, which unsuccessfully attempted to seize Petra in 312 BC. The city grew not just financially, but also culturally and architecturally, displaying advanced water-saving measures. Its engineers built a complex network of dams, cisterns, and water canals to support both the city's population and agriculture under severe desert conditions. Petra and its lost ancient civilization have baffled scholars for years. It was formerly a bustling center of politics, culture, and economy, as well as one of the region's most vital transportation hubs. Throughout the Middle Ages and far into the 18th century, Petra was shrouded in mystery, particularly in the Western world. The Crusaders briefly dominated the region in the 12th century and even built a stronghold there. But knowledge of Petra's former glory was restricted to local tribes and a few erudite Arab intellectuals. The famous 14th century traveler Ibn Battuta described Petra as a secluded location with houses beautifully carved into rock cliffs. This time in Petra's history is similar to that of another ancient city, Machu Picchu in Peru, which was likewise concealed from Western consciousness until it was discovered in 1911 by Hiram Bingham. Both towns were competent at controlling their natural environs, Petra with complex water management systems, and Machu Picchu with terrace farms and precise urban layout. Many Europeans were utterly ignorant of Petra's existence, despite ancient literature hinting at the architectural marvels concealed in the Jordanian highlands. This mystery lingered until explorers reintroduced Petra to the Western world, bridging the gap between ancient mythology and modern understanding. When the Romans arrived in 106 AD, however, the Nabateans were unable to repel them and were forced to submit. Petra was conquered and renamed Arabia Petraea, and the Romans dominated the city for 250 years. However, a major earthquake struck in the 4th century AD, tearing the city apart and ending its prominence just as maritime trade routes were established. Later, during the Byzantine era, numerous Christian churches were erected, but the city's importance declined. The earthquake has been credited as the single cause of Petra's destruction. However, some archaeologists believe there's more to the story. This includes Dr. Tom Paradise, who worked in Petra and appeared on the Smithsonian Channel's program Secrets Riddle of Petra. Based on his research and excavations, he believes Petra was subjected to another form of catastrophe at some time in its history. In 2017, when studying a stretch of stores on Petra's infamous Main Street, his team of archaeologists discovered something strange. Dr. Paradise stated, what they uncovered were massive beds of very white sandstone. He showed a sample of the valley's natural brick red sand and stated, it's much more characteristic of the lower part of the valley. However, he took sand from another mound discovered in the stores and remarked, this characteristic white sand doesn't belong here. Remember, Petra is located in a valley surrounded entirely by red sandstone hills. Dr. Paradise and his colleagues got to work exploring the mystery. He explained, we realized it had the particle size, color texture, and everything else in common with the sandstone we see across the valley and over the top of the hill. This sparked a deeper investigation that led us to the conclusion that Petra may have been affected by a gigantic flood. Petra has a history of experiencing severe storms and consequent floods. In 1963, its flood defenses succumbed to floodwaters and killed 22 visitors. The people who originally inhabited Petra were well aware of the hazards of flash floods, so they constructed a network of tunnels and offshoots to handle excess surface water. The Esik, Petra's main gateway, was critical to the city's survival since it served as its primary connection to the outside world. Dr. Paradise explained, what was actually a brilliant plan was that the tunnel was built to divert the water from the main Q, so the primary corridor into the main city would have been kept free of water during episodic rains. On the surface, it appeared to be foolproof engineering, but upon closer investigation, Dr. Paradise discovered evidence that water had formerly been substantially backed up near the entrance. He explained, the far side of the canal is entirely scoured clean, so water would have been flowing down the channel. It's backed up by the tunnel obstacle, and it's rising to the point that it begins to scrape the side walls before practically topping the bank far up there, as you can see where it's rounded. We're looking at 5, 6, 7 meters of floodwater just at this point, and that would have been an extraordinary amount of water. If Dr. Paradise's theory is true, floodwater would have backed up into the city, covering the streets with up to 16 feet of sand and debris. Nomadic shepherds used the massive structures carved into the rock face as shelters. It wasn't until 1812 that Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt discovered the ruins on one of his travels. Following this, Western explorers and archaeologists visited Petra, and an official endeavor to dig and examine the site was soon established. Born in 1784, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt was a Swiss explorer and researcher whose intense interest in intellectual prowess enabled him to make substantial contributions to the Western knowledge of lost or lesser-known ancient places. He picked up a special obsession with Petra, an ancient city whose location had slipped from European awarenesses. He learned many languages and immersed himself in other cultures. Far from all towns surrounded by dust and shimmering air, he discovered what Lawrence of Arabia would later characterize as the most beautiful place on earth. Today, Petra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Burckhardt had entered the Levant dressed as a Muslim. He studied Arabic, donned a turban and robe, and converted to Islam. His objective was to locate a hidden passage to the region of gold beyond Timbuktu. He never made it that far, and Sheikh Ibrahim, as he called himself, braved considerable risks to reach the magical cliffs of Petra because his behavior was too obvious. Burckhardt's advisor described him as a sorcerer looking for treasure, according to his journal entry. In 1806, Burckhardt moved to London to prepare for his excursions within the Ottoman Empire, where he joined the African Association, an organization dedicated to Africa's exploration and charting. He furthered his knowledge at Cambridge University, where he studied Arabic geography and Middle Eastern civilizations. It was here that he carefully crafted his alter persona, Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Abdullah. This persona was more than simply a ruse to conceal his European origins and adventurous intentions. It was a deep plunge into cultural integration, giving him safe passage and a more real experience in mostly Muslim countries. Burckhardt's expedition to Petra started in 1812 as a pilgrimage to the tomb of the prophet Aaron on Mount Hor, concealing his actual intention to discover and chronicle Petra. He had put together evidence about the vanished city from conversations with local traders and ambiguous references in old texts. His journey from Syria to the Arabian Peninsula was laden with dangers, from regional hostilities to the harsh desert landscape. But his disguise as an Islamic scholar provided him with critical cover. When Burckhardt arrived at Petra, he was faced with the spectacular vista of the Sick, a tiny ravine spanning a kilometer and surrounded by towering walls as high as 80 meters. This route led him to Petra's most renowned and intriguing building, the Treasury, which was cut straight into the blush-colored sandstone cliffs. Its front had an excellent combination of Nabatean, Greek, and Roman architectural features. Petra's attraction as a mysterious and adventurous site was strengthened by its depiction in the film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The film depicts Petra's treasury as the fictitious entry to the Holy Grail's last resting place, captivating audiences across the world and dramatically increasing tourism to the region. This representation in the film was well in line with the themes of discovery and exploration, demonstrating how the media can profoundly affect the public image and economic reality of ancient sites. What has now happened to bring Petra back to our attention? Well, a massive structure has been uncovered beneath the dunes of the Petra World Heritage Site in southern Jordan. According to the report, which was published in the American Schools of Oriental Research, archaeologists discovered the site using satellite imagery, drone photography, and ground assessments. The enormous platform is approximately the length of an Olympic swimming pool and twice the width. According to researchers, it differs from any other construction at the ancient site. It sits only about half a mile, 800 meters, south of the center of the ancient city. Archaeologists Sarah Parkak of the University of Alabama in Birmingham and Christopher Tuttle, executive director of the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, described the discovery as hiding in plain sight in their paper. As indicated by the most recent findings, while the hinterlands north and south of Petra's historic city center have been extensively examined since explorer Johann Burckhardt arrived in 1812, fresh discoveries are still being made around its urban core. The newly exposed building consists of a 184 by 161 foot, 56 by 49 meter platform, enclosing a somewhat smaller platform that was originally paved with flagstones. The east side of the inner platform was adorned with columns that previously capped a grand stairway. A small 28 by 28 foot, 8.5 by 8.5 meter structure was positioned north-south atop the interior platform, open to the east and facing the stairs. This massive open platform, topped by a small building and approached by a gigantic facade, has no similarities to any other structure in Petra. It most likely had a public, ceremonial purpose, making it the second biggest elevated, dedicated exhibition place known in Petra after the monastery. While the monument has not been explored, the existence of surface pottery from the mid-2nd century BC indicates that construction began during the Nabateans' inaugural public building program. The majority of the monuments seen today in Petra, such as the renowned treasury and the monastery, were erected during the city's second era, which lasted from the end of the 1st century BC to the 2nd century AD. According to Christopher Tuttle, the city had already been operating for a century or more at the time. Therefore, the latest find might represent a unique public monument from the city's early years. When discussing the discovery, Tuttle applauded the use of satellite and drone imagery for giving archaeologists wide-angle views from the air that allow them to spot the faint traces of old buildings and understand the connections between historical sites and monuments throughout the terrain. I'm sure that over the course of 2 centuries of research in Petra, someone had to know this site was there, but it's never been systematically studied or written up, Tuttle asserted. I've worked in Petra for 20 years and I knew that something was there, but it's certainly legitimate to call this a discovery. Speaking of buildings with ceremonial purposes, the treasury, or Al-Khazna in Arabic, is a temple in Petra, the ancient metropolis of the Nabatean kingdom. Today, the highly ornate, majestic, and enormous temple is a popular tourist destination, with tourism becoming Jordan's principal source of income. Originally, Al-Khazna was constructed as a tomb and crypt in the 1st century. As the name implies, many think that a pharaoh's treasures are lying beneath. However, some of the most intriguing parts of this remarkable structure appear to be concealed beneath the surface. The Al-Khazna crypt is an underground burial crypt located beneath the treasury. Human remains have been discovered in 4 of these compartments, presumably from 11 different people. The crypt was discovered in 1996, and the human remains were found in 2003 during an excavation headed by Suleiman Farhat. This excavation was a huge success, revealing a wealth of information. Archaeologists discovered and confirmed the presence of people, as well as bowls, incense, and presents devoted to gods, indicating a substantial religious presence. Farhat determined that Al-Khazna was located within a religious complex, with the crypt itself serving as a site of prayer. An altar was also discovered within the crypt, replete with lingering incense residue, which, while not proven, is believed to be frankincense. Archaeologists also discovered bowls filled with incense and presents for the gods, indicating that it was a center of worship. 3 tombs were also discovered within, which was extremely intriguing. The 3 rock-cut tombs in the typical Nabatean style were unearthed more than 6 meters below the current ground level. These were mostly intact, with hewn stairs going into them. Human bones and other material findings, including typical Nabatean pottery, support the dating of the tomb facade to the 1st century BCE. Some have proposed that the altars, ritual equipment, and apparent offerings indicate that this was a site of celebration and pilgrimage. At the base of the 3 graves, remains of paving stones from the original roadway were discovered, possibly as a continuation of those found in the sick. Although the obvious goal would be to continue excavations and connect the 2 areas, restoring the entire area in front of the Khazna to its ancient level, Jordanian authorities chose to backfill the majority of the excavated areas, temporarily concealing the 3 tombs from public view. Also, the king Aretas is said to have been buried elsewhere, but these underground chambers might hold the bones of his relatives. For ages, it has been unclear why the Nabateans erected the treasury, Al-Khazna. In contrast to prior finds, excavations in 2003 found substantial indications and information concerning the function of Al-Khazna. A niche holder carved from stone was used to hang offerings such as incense. Although the treasury, Al-Khazna, had previously been dated to between 100 BCE and 100 CE, carbon-based gifts, incense, etc., enabled for a more exact dating of the tomb to the 1st or early 1st century CE. As a result, it was determined that it was built during King Aretas IV's reign. Other findings of altars and ceremonial offerings indicate that this was a public festival and pilgrimage. Several other artifacts were discovered that may be used to estimate the date of the tomb, all of which point to a period around the 1st century BCE. Of course, the human remains played a significant role in determining this date, but there were also several ceramic samples that contributed to this determination. Carbon-based offerings found within the crypt, such as incense, revealed a more accurate date. So although we were previously operating in the broad period from around 100 BCE to 100 CE, these carbon-based artifacts, one of which was a niche holder cut from stone from which offerings were hung, allowed study to focus particularly on the early 1st century CE. The paved floor of Al-Sikh disappears into the sands around 300 meters before reaching Al-Khazna. It was suggested in the late 1990s that it may have led to the original ground floor of Al-Khazna, which might be at least 6 to 8 meters below the current ground level. Archaeologists suspected that an entire buried level lay beneath decades of sand, and this level was uncovered 6 meters below. Similarly, researchers discovered that the Al-Sikh crypt was erected during the time of King Aretas IV. Given this, many have speculated that at least part of the found bones belonged to relatives of King Aretas, Petra's most well-known king. The treasury, or Al-Khazna, was most likely built in the 1st century BCE or early in the 1st century CE. It has 2 levels, each measuring 25.30 meters in width and 39.1 meters in height. The treasury stands about 40 meters tall and is beautifully carved with Corinthian capitals, friezes, figures, and more. The treasury is capped with a burial urn, which according to local tradition contains a pharaoh's riches. However, the urn really served as a royal monument. Moving from buildings with ceremonial purposes, we now discuss luxury finds in the desert. 2 centuries after Burckhardt's discovery of the rock-cut city in Jordan, the Basel Museum of Ancient Art is exhibiting the latest archaeological finds from the Atlantis of the desert. 4 teams of scientists from France, Germany, Switzerland, and the United States are now working on the site. Back in the 1970s, we still believed that Petra was purely a city of priests and the dead, says archaeologist Laurent Gorgeret. More than 500 spectacular facades have been carved into the rocks, with burial chambers behind them. A puzzling remark by the ancient Greek geographer Strabo that the Nabateans have the same regard for the dead as for dung led many to conclude that Petra was the site of some strange cult of the dead. As archaeologists have discovered the true nature of the buildings carved into the cliffs, such myths have been discarded. In fact, it was discovered that Petra was once an oasis with irrigated gardens and avenues dotted with temples and luxurious villas. There were camel troughs and storage tanks for frankincense, myrrh, and Indian spices. The small town in the valley comprised 2 square kilometers, 0.77 square miles. Archaeologists discovered wine amphorae from the Mediterranean island of Rhodes, marble from Turkey, and the remnants of edible fish in the Red Sea. In the middle of the hamlet, there was an elephant-headed temple. Stefan Schmid, an archaeologist at Berlin's Humboldt University, is also uncovering interesting discoveries at his excavation atop the Biara rock massif, 330 meters, 1,080 feet above the settlement, where a king's home once stood. It had baths, a latrine with a flushing system, and heated rooms. Firewood had to be hauled up to the palace via a small passage. The Arab monarchs that resided there wore red robes. According to Schmid, the castle hosted an almost obscene display of money and power. We also take a look at the Sajama lines. The mysterious Sajama lines are located in Bolivia near the Nevada Sajama volcano. There exists a sophisticated and intricate network of lines. These nearly perfect straight roads cover more than 22,525 square kilometers and are made up of thousands, probably tens of thousands, of individually carved straight lines. This seemingly strange trait appears to have an intriguing cultural basis. These lines have been carved into the earth by indigenous people living around the Sajama volcano for over 3,000 years. But other than these general descriptions, we don't know much about who built them, just that they had been in progress for ages upon centuries. This feat is undeniably amazing, with the linear length estimated to be 3 times the breadth of the United States. These astonishing statistics make the Sajama lines the largest archaeological site in the Andes, and some consider it the largest piece of artwork in the world. The lines were physically created by scraping away plants and surface material with dark pigmentation, such as dirt and oxidized rock, until a lighter substance gradually appeared. The formation process appears to be similar to that of the Nazca lines. However, with both sets of lines, we do not know why they are there, what their purpose, if any, is, or how they were made so precisely, especially given their near-perfect straight nature. The Sajama lines are an impressive feat when considering the natural topography and obstacles that would undoubtedly impede this process. Some have proposed hypotheses about the function of the lines, claiming that they were used by indigenous people to make their way to sacred locations during pilgrimages. The lines therefore connected the settlements located along the lines to the sacred sites in question. The religious and cultural link hypotheses appear to be valid since there are intersections of the lines and remnants of wakas and chulpas, which are shrines and burial towers, and many of the lines go to various Catholic churches. There are many unknowns surrounding these archaeological phenomena, and it is possible that additional explanations will emerge in the future. Another possibility is that these issues will stay unresolved for generations. Still on hidden phenomena, some things are deliberately withheld from public knowledge. These include classified material, which is anything that the government considers critical enough to keep from the public or general understanding. Typically, this implies that there are rules and restrictions in place to prohibit all but a few people from seeing this information. Historically, many papers and materials have been kept hidden from prying public eyes. Nevertheless, it is becoming more common for a document, location, or other sensitive material to be declassified with each passing 25 years. After all, secret evidence is frequently reviewed. At some time, we must recognize that secrecy is no longer necessary on certain matters, and that it is now safe to share the knowledge with the rest of the world. In 2004, the Ministry of Defense announced on its website that a government subterranean location in Wiltshire, southwest England, had been kept secret. Though declassified at the end of 2004, the original plan was to use the location as a government relocation site in the event of wartime damage. This was the first time an official statement had been made about the underground hideaway buried away under the picturesque town of Caution. Some may argue that for 40 years, this was the British military's most tightly held secret. So why was there a need for a potential government relocation site in the first place? In the 1950s, at the peak of the rivalry between world superpowers, the impending possibility of war became an increasingly serious issue. In light of this, the Cabinet Office determined that in the case of a dispute, preparing an alternate seat of government was a wise strategy. The Central Government Conflict Headquarters was established in 1955, and work on the subterranean relocation site began. The location immediately became known as the Burlington Bunker, despite the fact that it was never referred to as a bunker in any official material. Burlington was originally intended as a code name, but the catchy alliteration appears to have remained. This silent location was to be built in a 240-acre quarry, filled with a complicated maze of gates, streets, and different event halls spanning an impressive 35 acres. This was not just a single safe chamber to hide in, rather it was a subterranean metropolis. This location was planned to accommodate the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, the whole British government, 4,000 employees, but not their families, and the royal family in the event of an assault. This configuration would have kept the ruling body secure for 90 days in the event of a thermonuclear strike. Burlington's equipment comprised 100-foot deep, reinforced concrete walls, offices, beds, telephones, a bakery, a hospital, and a BBC broadcasting studio designed to facilitate contact between the government and survivors. However, we have to question how those hypothetical survivors would have reacted to the knowledge that, while they were in danger, battling for their lives, the most powerful individuals were being protected. What do you think of these findings, particularly regarding Petra? Could Petra's mysteries be more complex than previously thought? What other secrets might still be hidden in the sands of this ancient city? Thank you for watching another episode of Voyager. While you are still here, click the video on your screen to see more mind-blowing videos like this one.